going to be one. Now, in the first year or two, or even 3 of landscaping, we experienced the typical landscaper frustrations. Time wasted from clients that didn't have sufficient budget, all those kinds of things. Tire kickers, in other words, as I like to call them. Or even worse, you spend the time with the client and then your competitor gets the job. And have you ever noticed how sometimes when you've designed the job and you've priced the job and it's normally 2 or 3 times more than the client wants to spend, that quite often somebody else gets the job, and the reason for that is that you have conditioned the client. They now realise that what they want is going to exceed their budget or exceed their spend limit by 2, 3 or even 4 times. And what it does is it alters their perception of what they want. It brings their perception, if you like, back into line with reality. Unfortunately, it's quite often the first landscaper in that does that and adjusts it for the next landscaper they contact. Or clients with insufficient budget, or people just wanting free ideas. You price plans and jobs and you end up not getting the job. You know, like I say, even worse, one of your competitors gets the job. Sometimes it's famine or feast. Sometimes it was so busy we didn't know what to do next. Other times we didn't have enough work on. And I can distinctly remember sitting there on a Friday night wondering what on earth the staff were going to, this is after being in business a few years, wondering what the staff were going to do on a Monday morning. And if you've ever experienced that or anything like that, then you'll know exactly what I mean, and you'll know exactly how stressful that can be. Wanting to keep work booked up ahead for X amount of time. Thinking that was a good way for me to assess the performance of my business. Thinking that was a good answer to give other landscapers that I bumped into at the landscape yard. Oh, you were booked up for 3 months ahead of the time. Well, so what if you booked up for 3 months ahead of the time? Is that really a good way to assess the performance of your business? And the answer is no, it's not. It might mean you're quite busy, but are you actually making any money out of your business? Are you actually enjoying what you're doing? Are you still getting a whole bunch of time wasters? Do you find it stressful? Is the business producing the annual profit you want it to? Is perhaps a better way to assess the performance of your business. Not that you go and talk about that at the landscape yard, of course. Now, if you're getting to the point where you're pricing jobs and you're getting a number of clients say to you something along the lines of, we'll have a bit of a think about it, or we'll get back to you, then there's something really wrong with your process somewhere, perhaps in more than one place. You see, if you're getting to the stage with the client where you're pricing projects and you don't know what the budget is, then you are severely disadvantaged. Because as we talked about just a few minutes ago, chances are the client's wish list is going to exceed the spend limit by 50%, 100%, 2, 3, 400%. And if I talk to landscapers, that is probably the number one problem that most landscapers have. They normally say people are wasting their time. And you dig a bit deeper, well, why are they wasting your time? Oh, because we go and do a consultation and we draw a nice plan and we price it out and then they can't afford it. And they blame the customer. Like it's the customer's fault. Well, no, it's not the customer's fault. It's the landscaper and or the landscape designer's job to get that spend limit or budget from the client and to give professional guidance. If somebody's building a wish list a mile long with all these expensive things on there, it's the wrong thing to think, oh, this is going to be a fantastically expensive landscape, I'm going to make an absolute killing. Because 9 times out of 10 or even 99 times out of 100, that client is not going to be able to afford it. But there's one thing I've learnt, is whether they're on the bones of their butt having built their first new home as a young couple, or whether they are a mature couple that are multi-millionaires, they all have the same problem. their wish list will nearly always exceed their budget or spend limit. So you, as the person running that consultation, absolutely must establish that budget. Now, I found myself buried in what I call the self-employed rat race, and this is where you chase the work and you do the work, and it goes around and around and around and around in circles. And if you've ever been in the situation, which I'm sure that probably every single person listening to this video today, if you've ever been in the situation, then you'll know exactly what I mean and exactly how this feels. No sooner have you done the work, but then you've got to go and, particularly if you're a one-man band, but no sooner have you done the work, but then you've got to go and chase the work. Because if you don't chase the work, you're not going to get any more work to go and do. And then you furiously do that, and then you've got to go and chase some more work, and it just goes around and around and around and around and around, and it seems to be never ending. And the problem with this is that the clients are kind of in control. You're trying to be everything to everybody. You're trying to keep everybody happy. You're trying to make money. You're trying to be the business owner. You're trying to be the person that, like the technician that installs the landscaping. You're trying to be the person that's in charge of marketing, the person in charge of pricing, the person in charge of administration. You're trying to be every blinking thing. Now, the smaller your business, kind of the worse it is, because you are everything, and it's incredibly time consuming and it's incredibly exhausting. My sales conversion rate, I thought it was around 70 to 80%, but when I actually tested it, I discovered that it was about 30%. And that's a very low conversion rate, and anyone who is thinking, far out Steve, that is really low, and yes it was, I highly recommend that you go and test your own conversion rate. If you've never done it before, then you might, like I did, get the shock of your life. And see, we tend to believe that we're doing better than what we actually are when it comes to converting people into actual client. And I remember at the time when I was asked by the business coach that I had at the time, this was many years ago, what's your conversion rate? I told him 70 to 80% would probably be about what it is. I'll never forget the look on his face, and it was the look of, really? Well, you're in for a shock. Highly recommend you go and test your conversion rate. See, everything from here to here was wasted time. Not the client's fault, my fault. My fault as the business owner for having insufficient processes and systems. And the reason for this is I was just another brick in the wall. I was just another brick in the wall landscaper, and there was no particular difference between my business and my competitor's business. Now you might be thinking, well, hang on Steve, you won the gold award at the Ellerslie Flower Show. Now, the reality is this, yeah, I had my awards, but so did a number of other landscapers in town also have awards from the Ellerslie Flower Show or similar type shows. So again, I was still just another brick in the wall. So anyway, what did I do to change this? Well, I read books on business. I studied DVDs on business. I listened to CDs and tapes, all on business and marketing and how to build a more successful company. I hired a business coach for 2 years. I attended business type seminars, and I went to a 7-day business boot camp over in another country. Now all of this was fantastic, but it was the in the trenches, working it out for myself, learning the strategies from all this stuff here, and then going and trying it for myself out in the real world. You see, you can read a book on how to fly a helicopter. You can read a book on how to fly a helicopter 10 or 12 times. Does that mean you now know how to fly a helicopter? No, of course it doesn't. You've actually got to sit beside the instructor at some point. Obviously there's going to be a whole bunch of theory first, but at some point, and you've actually got to go and do the thing. Hence the saying, to know and not to do is not yet to know. In other words, if you're not doing it, you don't really know it. You've actually got to go and do something. You've actually got to go and do the stuff and practice the stuff to get good at the stuff.